Hi there. Wherever you are right now, whatever kind of day you've had, I'm glad you're here. This is your time to slow down, to let your thoughts settle, and to drift gently into the quiet spaces of the past. Tonight, we're going to take a slow, meandering journey through a corner of history, one that might be dusty, forgotten, or just overlooked. You won't need to remember any names or dates. There's nothing to memorize, nothing to keep track of. Just listen. Let the images take shape in your mind, like soft candlelight flickering across stone walls or the hush of footsteps on ancient roads. The past can be loud and brutal, but here we move through it slowly, quietly, like a breeze through old pages. So, if you haven't already, dim the lights, get comfortable, maybe pull the covers a little closer, and if this kind of calm storytelling helps you unwind, feel free to like the video or subscribe. It helps others find this quiet space too. Take a deep breath, and when you're ready, we'll begin.
Imagine you wake not to an alarm clock, but to the gentle murmur of the city rising. It begins subtly. The clack of shutters, the shuffle of sandals over packed earth, the creak of rope lifting a clay jar from a well. The sun hasn't quite broken over the walls of Babylon yet, but the sky is turning a soft, muted blue, the kind of blue that feels like cool linen pressed against your skin. You sit up slowly from your reed mat. Your joints feel stiff though. You're still young. The long hours of sitting with shoulders hunched over tablets has made your spine feel older than it is. The mud brick walls around you are still cool to the touch. The night air lingers in the crevices, holding the scent of dust, damp straw, and the faint sweetness of drying dates. You're not a noble, not a warrior. You're a stoa scribe, one of the quiet engines of the city. You dress in a simple tunic, the linen rough but familiar. You fasten it with a cord at your waist, rub your eyes, and head to the small courtyard where the light is beginning to spill down in long golden beams. This is your domain, not the battlefield, not the palace, but here beneath the wide Mesopotamian sky, surrounded by reed mats, sun-dried bricks, and rows of clay tablets, you are both artist and laborer. You prepare the tools of your trade, a lump of fresh clay, soft, cool, almost like dough. You knead it gently, rolling it into a small palm-sized tablet. Then the stylus, a thin wedge-shaped reed worn at the tip, but still firm. You dip it in water, just enough to keep the strokes smooth. Each mark matters. There are no second drafts. The cuneiform script is not beautiful in a decorative sense. It's not painted or illuminated, but it is precise, ordered, rhythmic, a dance of angles and impressions, left to right, top to bottom. You learn to press with even force, to angle the stylus just so. You begin copying. 1 shekel of silver, owed by Enlil-Bani to the temple of Ishtar. You pause, recheck the figures, double-check the wedges, the spacing, then breathe. In this moment, you are suspended in time. You could be 10 years ago, or 2000 from now. It doesn't matter. The shape of the tablet in your hand is the same. The weight of it is comforting. The language is unchanged. You remember your training, years of rote learning, of being rapped on the knuckles with a stylus for a misplaced wedge. You remember long days tracing out phrases over and over. The scribe is the mouth of the king. To write is to remember. You remember the smells, melted bitumen from sealing envelopes, the grainy steam from the pot where old tablets were soaked and erased. Hours pass. The sun climbs. At midday, you pause to eat. A piece of bread, dense and still warm from the communal oven. A smear of soft cheese. A few dates, sticky with syrup. You eat slowly, seated on the edge of the shaded wall. Around you, other scribes murmur, laugh quietly. Some recite contracts from memory. Others sketch symbols in the dust with fingers for practice. There is comfort in the repetition. You do not battle for glory. You do not argue in the temple courts. But your work, your invisible, tireless labor holds the city together. You document trades, resolve disputes, count grain, record births, preserve rituals. Still, the work is not easy. If a nobleman's contract is flawed, the scribe is blamed. If temple grain is miscounted, the scribe must answer. A simple oversight, a smudged symbol, a missed line can cost you everything. There is no praise for flawless work, only quiet expectations. You grow used to silence, to breathing shallowly in the heat, to focusing your mind into a fine, narrow line like your stylus tip. Sometimes at night, you lie on your mat and imagine different lives. A potter, shaping clay not into words, but into vessels. A boatman, drifting silently down the Euphrates beneath stars. A priest, chanting hymns to Shamash at dawn. But your hands know this craft too well. You know how to recognize a forged seal. You know which scribes can be trusted to copy legal texts without embellishment. You know the subtle difference between a marriage contract and a concubinage agreement, both written in the same language, but carrying lifetimes of meaning. By dusk, your hands are sore, your neck tight, but your mind is still. You carry your finished tablets to the overseer. He nods briefly. You place them in the storehouse with the others, in rows, on shelves, hundreds of them, each one a moment, frozen, a name, a sum, a punishment, a prayer. Your work is buried in silence, but it endures. It's said that kings live and die, but the scribe's words outlast even time. As the sun sets, you sit by a low wall. You sip barley water. You look at the sky turning violet. The scent of tamarisk trees drifts in on the breeze. Somewhere, a temple gong sounds once, a slow, deep vibration. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you forget the weight of clay, the pressure of eyes watching your work, the ache in your shoulders. There is only cool stone, a flickering star, the whisper of dust. This was the life of a Babylonian scribe, not heroic, not dramatic, but vital. The quiet pulse of a civilization inscribed one mark at a time. So now, as your own breath slows, feel the stillness settle around you. Let the repetition, the texture of history, and the hush of forgotten lives carry you toward sleep. Rest easy. There is no deadline here, no overseer, only the gentle rhythm of clay and stars. The rise and fall of Hammurabi's code, how one king tried to control chaos through brutal laws and divine justice. As you gently drift further into the world of ancient Mesopotamia, we move from the dusty courtyards of scribes to the grand chambers of power, to a king whose name still echoes across millennia, Hammurabi. Imagine, for a moment, a quiet morning in the city of Babylon around 1750 BC. The sun is just beginning to warm the bricks of the temple walls, and incense wafts lazily through the palace corridors. Outside, merchants are arranging their goods: clay jars of sesame oil, woolen tunics, bundles of barley. Children dart between stalls, and oxen pull carts through narrow lanes thick with voices and footsteps. But within the palace, something monumental is unfolding. King Hammurabi, the sixth ruler of the first Babylonian dynasty, sits in solemn contemplation. He is not just a monarch, he believes himself chosen by the gods to bring order to a chaotic world. His kingdom is vast and growing, stitched together from conquered city-states, each with its own traditions and its own quarrels. And Hammurabi has a vision of unity through law. He commissions the carving of a code 282 laws, painstakingly etched into a towering black stone, steely, written in the crisp wedges of cuneiform. The stone stands nearly 8 feet tall. At the top, an image, Hammurabi standing before Shamash, the god of justice, receiving the rod and ring of kingship. It is a symbol not just of authority, but of cosmic legitimacy. The code is not the first legal system in the ancient world, but it is one of the most complete and deeply moralistic. And it speaks in a voice that is clear, commanding, and, at times, chilling. If a man put out the eye of another man, his eye shall be put out. If a builder constructs a house that collapses and kills the owner, the builder shall be put to death. The laws address marriage, trade, theft, debt, slavery, and punishment. They are precise, often brutal, but carefully calibrated. There are different rules for nobles, for commoners, for slaves. Justice is not equal, but it is organized. The goal is not just punishment, it is stability. You can imagine the quiet ceremony when the stone stele is unveiled. Priests in long linen robes murmuring blessings. Scribes nodding in approval. The people, perhaps awed, perhaps afraid, murmuring among themselves. It stands in a public place, where anyone, at least anyone who can read, may see it. Though few can read it, its mere presence commands respect, and so Babylon becomes something new, a legal state. Hammurabi is no longer merely a warrior king or temple builder. He is the great lawgiver. But of course, time moves forward, even for kings. Hammurabi dies, and his son takes the throne. The empire begins to weaken. Drought strikes the land. Enemies stir at the borders. The unity Hammurabi forged starts to unravel. The code remains, but it is no longer read aloud. It becomes a symbol, a relic of a more structured time. Centuries pass. The once proud stele is toppled and taken as a war prize by the Elamites, dragged hundreds of miles away to the distant city of Susa. There it lies buried for nearly 3,000 years, forgotten under layers of dust and sand, until 1901, when French archaeologists, digging under a Persian hill, uncover a smooth black stone covered in cuneiform. It is Hammurabi's code, still legible, still commanding, the laws of a king long gone, speaking across time. Today, the code stands in the Louvre Museum in Paris, protected by glass. Lit softly from above, visitors pass in silence, pausing to take in the ancient lines, so straight, so sharp, carved with such care. It is easy to forget, in our modern world of courts and contracts, how revolutionary this was. A society ruled, not by whim, but by principle. A monarch binding himself, at least in theory, to the same laws he imposed. And yet, as you relax deeper into this gentle historical flow, you might reflect on how little and how much has changed. We still seek justice. We still argue about fairness. We still write our laws in stone or its modern equivalent. And we still wonder what makes a society truly just. In Babylon, they thought the answer was divine order, hierarchy, and harsh deterrence. Whether it worked, well, that is harder to say. But the stele still stands. And in that sense, so does Hammurabi now. The sands shift again. The stone fades from view. And in the distance, we see another kind of mystery, not of law, but of knowledge. We begin to wonder, what else might have been hidden, buried in clay and time? As your breath grows slower and your eyelids heavier, let us drift into a quieter corner of the ancient world, away from courts and laws, beyond battles and thrones, to a temple, a sunlit city, and 2 clay tablets that have waited for nearly 4,000 years to be remembered. We are in Sippar. This once great Mesopotamian city sat north of Babylon, not far from where the Euphrates gently wound through the plains. It was sacred to Shamash, the god of the sun and justice, and it was here that generations of scribes copied stories, recorded trade, and preserved the pulse of daily life into damp clay. For centuries, Sippar slumbered beneath the earth. Then, in the quiet hum of archaeological work during the 1980s, something remarkable came to light. A room, small, quiet, and filled with shelves. Upon those mud brick shelves sat hundreds upon hundreds of clay tablets, a library, undisturbed. The chamber was part of the temple complex of Shamash. Its walls were lined with niches, carefully designed to hold rectangular clay tablets. In its prime, this room may have stored up to 2,000 individual pieces of writing. Most were layered 2 or even 3 rows deep in each shelf. They sat patiently, waiting. These tablets weren't all from a single moment in time. Some were written during the reign of Hammurabi's successors. Others were copied centuries later, in the shadow of Persian rule. Together, they spanned over 1,000 years of memory, a true archive. This was no public library, but something closer to a scribe's workshop and school, where students learned the shape of each sign by copying them again and again, where temple accountants tracked inventories, where astronomers observed the stars and recorded omens. where hymns were written for the gods, and laws were copied for memory's sake. Among the treasures found here were wisdom texts, poetic laments, hymns to Shamash, and even astronomical records. Some tablets listed lunar eclipses or tracked the movements of Venus. Others taught aspiring scribes the standard lists of professions, animals, cities, and gods, memorized by rote for generations. And yes, there were even fragments of Hammurabi's legacy. Passages from his famous code, or from royal inscriptions, were recopied here, centuries after his death, as exercises and historical references. Imagine this room in use. The scent of warm clay and oil lamps, the quiet scratching of styluses, the soft recitation of signs, a teacher correcting a pupil's uncertain hand, the faint humming of a hymn drifting from a nearby corridor. Unlike many archives where tablets are found scattered, the Sippar library was neatly organized, a sign that its contents were valued, catalogued, perhaps even lent or read in sequence. And yet, it too was eventually abandoned, sealed beneath dust, forgotten, until modern hands brushed soil away and found them again. These fragile bricks of memory. Many tablets were salt-encrusted, damaged, or broken. Some still await translation, but each one carries a voice, a whisper, a trace of thought preserved across millennia. As you lie there now, eyes closing, let the image of this small room settle in your mind. Shelves filled with clay stories. The air still, the weight of time so gentle you barely feel it. Sippar's lost library is a place of peace, a sanctuary of thought. Let it soothe you now, as we drift gently from clay to candlelight, preparing to step next into the banquets and rituals of ancient palaces. But for now, stay here, among the scribes, among the shelves, among the soft silence of the past. Let the noise of the scribes fade behind you now, as we step beyond the dusty libraries and the quiet city temples. Our journey brings us forward through time, still in Babylon, but centuries later. The clay tablets have grown more sophisticated, the city larger, louder, and the name whispered through its tiled halls is no longer Hammurabi. It is Nebuchadnezzar. You've likely heard his name before. It rolls like thunder, heavy, regal, perhaps even a little menacing. But tonight, we're not here to recount military conquests or divine dreams. We're here to explore something slower, something quieter, something richly textured and warmly lit. We're stepping inside the palace, but not as a king, not even as a servant. Imagine yourself as a quiet observer, perhaps a musician in the corner, or a cupbearer still and invisible. You're allowed to watch, just watch, as the rhythm of royal life unfolds around you. And what a rhythm it is. A glimpse behind the walls, the outer city, with its traders, potters, scribes, and farmers, is far behind. Inside the inner sanctum of Babylon, the palace complex stretches like a separate world. Its walls gleam with baked bricks, glazed in deep blues and honey golds. Along the corridors, you pass reliefs of lions and bulls, stylized and powerful, yet silent. You hear the gentle slap of sandals on polished floors. The aroma of incense, frankincense perhaps, or cinnamon, hangs in the air like a slow-moving fog. Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon is grand. Over 600 temples, wide avenues, hanging gardens, perhaps only legend, perhaps not, fed by a mysterious system of irrigation and built for a queen who missed the mountains of her homeland. But here, in the palace, the grandeur is personal. The banquet hall, the great hall, is not a riotous feast. Not tonight. It is deliberate, ceremonial. Long tables stretch beneath high, shadowed ceilings. On them, low brass bowls shimmer with preserved dates, pickled garlic, roasted lamb, and soft cheeses wrapped in fig leaves. There is honeyed bread, still warm. There are jars of wine, deep red, gently spiced, and cool water perfumed with rose petals. Every seat is assigned, every cushion perfectly placed. The guests are nobles, priests, temple administrators, those who help maintain the delicate machinery of power. But here's something you might not expect. The king doesn't eat first. In Babylon, meals, even royal ones, begin with ritual. A blessing to Marduk, god of the city, a moment of silence, a pause, like the hush before music begins. Only then do the dishes arrive in their precise order, every course with its own meaning, every flavor part of something larger than appetite. Power served cold, then warm. Nebuchadnezzar's presence dominates the room. You might not see him clearly. Perhaps he sits behind a screen of carved wood or heavy tapestry, but his absence would be deafening. He speaks little. When he does, it is quiet. The guests lean in slightly, not out of fear, but because even his smallest gesture can shift careers, move armies, grant land, or cast someone into disgrace. You watch his hand rise just a little, and a servant crosses the room, bowing once, twice, and presenting a gift, a carved ivory box, or a scroll of omens, or perhaps a live monkey from the Indus Valley, blinking in the lantern light. This is not opulence for the sake of luxury. It is power, woven into every bite, every cup, every silence. The quiet hierarchy of servants behind the scenes. An army of hands keeps the palace breathing. Servants know every creak of every door. They are shadows, gliding from kitchen to hall. Linen robes, bare feet, precise movements. A dropped plate could mean disgrace. A wrongly delivered message could append alliances. Yet many of them have worked here their entire lives. Some were born within these walls, others brought from distant provinces, trained from childhood in the arts of discretion. Their world is one of secrets, of routine, of observing without ever being seen. And in their silence, their invisible choreography, the kingdom continues. At the edge of power, as the meal winds down, the guests relax just slightly. Stories begin to unfurl. Laughter, low and careful. Someone plays a stringed instrument in the corner, a lyre perhaps, or a harp of long-forgotten design. Its soft notes float like threads of gold through the flickering lantern light. A scribe, seated at a smaller table nearby, quietly records the night's events, not for the public record, but for palace memory. Who spoke with whom? Who was absent? Who asked for more wine? These little moments ... matter. The fire crackles. The food grows cold. The night deepens, and still the rhythm of the palace continues. Always in motion, always observing. A final glance. As you leave the hall, your role complete, your tray empty, your music faded, you glance back once more. Nebuchadnezzar still sits beneath the banners of Babylon, unmoved, his silhouette etched in torchlight. This is what power looked like in its quietest moments, not on battlefields, not in decrees, but here, over bread and oil, over wine and murmured words, in the warmth of a palace evening. And just like that ... it fades. The city outside still breathes, the river flows, and the stars wheel silently above the palace roof, as they have done for millennia. Let them watch over you now. Let your mind drift, past temple shadows and sandstone walls, into stillness, into sleep.
And that is where our journey ends tonight. Maybe you're still here, or maybe you've already drifted off. Either way, thank you for being part of this quiet little trip through time. If this helped you rest, feel free to leave a like or subscribe. And if you're still awake, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know where you're listening from, or just say hello. Sleep deeply, and I'll see you in the next story.